Now let's focus on the opposite of silence, violence. There are also 3 steps that we've identified toward violence. The same skills for noticing silence apply here with violence. Let's review the definitions and descriptors and then listen to an example to make sure we can see where people are on the Dialogue Smarts map. Violence is defined as any action taken to compel or control others to accept your point of view. It is an act to win or get even. We think it is useful to define 3 steps away from dialogue toward violence. The first step is controlling. This consists of anything we do to make sure that only our information or content gets in the pool of meaning. It may take the form of cutting other people off, of overstating our opinions, of interrupting people. It can mean forcefully changing the subject or using interrogation to control the pace and direction of the conversation, to get your points in and minimize other points of view. Monologuing is a form of controlling. The next step away from dialogue is labeling. Labeling involves putting down the other person's ideas with such phrases as, "That's stupid," or, "Oh sure, that's a cute idea, but let's move to some points that mean something." When one person ridicules another's information, that's a form of labeling. And one form of labeling that people use frequently is sarcasm, for example. Now that's an idea that's just slightly ahead of its time, say like a million years. The third step is attacking. Like silence, there are 3 ways to attack, all painful, emotionally, psychologically, and physically. This is a stage of violence when we've given up on dealing with issues and ideas and we want to punish the other person personally. We resort to abusive ideas and tactics like belittling, name-calling, threatening, and hurting. You can tell when labeling has moved to attacking when a person gives up on trying to win by destroying the person's ideas and moves to making sure that the other person feels some sort of loss or pain personally. Here's an example that we'll listen to, and then I'll talk about it. This time, it's a scene from home with 2 couples meeting at one home to travel to a high school graduation ceremony. As you listen, I want you to look or listen carefully. What's happening? What forms of violence do you hear? Controlling, labeling, attacking? Use your third eye or third ear.
Hi. We're almost ready. Sam just got home from work. You know, I think the little weasel figured that if he worked late enough, he might get away with skipping out on the whole thing. He was wrong.
He doesn't want to go to a high school graduation. Go figure. Nothing satisfies me more than squatting on a steel bench for 2 hours, listening to a high school principal drone on until I sink into a coma.
Now, honey, what did I say about tonight?
Jeez, it's like living with my mom. Can't you go 5 minutes without correcting me? I mean, really, is that asking too much?
Okay, all right, here's the plan. This thing goes 1 minute over an hour, we are out of there, okay? Everybody is gonna scoot because I'm driving the car and that car is pulling out after 60 minutes. We got that?
We'll talk about that on the way there.
There's nothing to talk about. Come on, here we go.
Yeah, Sam, you...
If you humiliate me like that one more time in public, you will be sorry. Do you hear me?
I was only kidding. You know what your problem is? You don't have a sense of humor. That and the fact that you're controlling and patronizing and sucking the life out of me.
What was that?
Oh, nothing, dear.
What happened? Here's my take, and it's not the only way of looking at it, but here are a few highlights. First, Sam moved to controlling. He interrupted others, cut them off, and he verbally dismissed others' attempts to contribute. There's nothing to talk about. Then Jackie attacks. She threatens Rick. She's feeling some pain of being embarrassed, and she wants Rick to feel that amount of pain and a pinch more. Finally, Rick responds when Jackie is there by masking, and then he labels her. That's what gossiping is, labeling people who aren't there to hear it. When we notice quickly if we or others are moving toward violence, we can catch it quickly and avoid the costs. And what are the costs? Why is violence such a problem? That's pretty self-evident. I find that I can't watch a news broadcast or read a newspaper that isn't full of examples of violence. And the cost, mistrust, avoidance, getting even, fights, war, all are serious and all are indications of people who aren't using dialogue. When people use any of these forms of violence to convince, compel, or coerce, they shut down the free flow of information. Then they have a hard time getting the benefits of a healthy pool of meaning, even if they ask and ask. They also put safety at risk, and that is literal in many cases. They always create new problems. So why do people move toward violence? And why do they sometimes seem oblivious? Again, there's no one answer here. Sometimes people move toward violence because it's habit. That's how they see the world and how they've succeeded for years in getting what they want. Our experience suggests that there is a more common reason, and that is that people don't have any different skills. They are limited in their influence strategies. They want to win, and when others start questioning, adding ideas, or debating, they use the skills that they think will help them win because they don't have other skills. Over the years, I have semi-joked that there are three major management styles: metaphor, semaphore, and 2x4. It's too bad that in tough conversations, so many people at work and at home pull out the 2x4 and try to beat others into submission. Observing these behaviors for years, we've come to this conclusion. When it matters the most, we often do our worst. When the conversation is most crucial, we often use our least effective skills. Why? Because we are so caught up in the content that we can't see, literally can't see, the issues of safety, respect, and purpose. But there is good news. We found that there is hope. Improvement is possible. Our research and the experience we've had in training thousands of managers and employees and parents have convinced us that when people use the Dialogue Smarts map, they are more likely to notice when they're moving towards silence or toward violence and then stop it. And they are able to notice it sooner so that the costs are minimized and the benefits of dialogue are more fully realized. With practice, this map, the Dialogue Smarts model, helps us learn to look. It helps us avoid silence and violence and spend more time in dialogue. Now, let's turn to the topic of noticing ourselves, of noticing our impact on crucial conversations. This next point also deals with maps. I imagine that you, like me, have gone into a big mall, one of those gigantic shopping monuments with about 1,000 stores. Say, for example, I'm looking for a shop in this enormous complex that sells only Scottish antique golf balls. I find a map of the mall, and it too is huge. For that map to make sense and to be useful, I need to know one thing. So I find the key. It says, "You are here." The Dialogue Smarts map is also more useful when you find that same key, "You are here." What are your natural tendencies when conversations get crucial, when they deal with high stakes, high emotions, and differing opinions? Do you stay in dialogue or do you move toward silence or violence? Do you do one thing with colleagues and another with a boss? Do you act in one way with your teenager and another with your Uncle John? How you act in tough times is what we call style under stress. It's your native tongue. Let me tell you a story of where we got native tongue or style under stress. Years ago, when I was teaching a leadership seminar for a large multinational, the president of the European division came to speak to this group of 40 managers who came from about 10 countries. His introduction included the fact that he spoke 7 languages fluently. After a greeting and a short introduction, he asked me to role play with him. I'm a bit of a ham, so I jumped up and said, "You bet." He asked me, "Do you speak a language other than English?" I said, "Ein bisschen Deutsch," which means a little German. He made a request in German, to which I replied, "Ein bisschen Deutsch." I only speak a little German. He then suggested that when we build this picket fence, we ought to use English, and he asked me to hand him a pretend picket. I did, and he took it, he positioned it, and pounded the nails in the top and the bottom of the board. He motioned, and I handed him the next board, and so on. Then at the top of a hammer swing, he paused, and then with a mighty downward swing, he hit his thumb. He grimaced, he held his painful thumb, he carried on until he had everyone's attention, and then he asked, "In what language do I cuss?" Someone immediately called out, "Your native tongue." He said, "You're absolutely right, Lebanese." I almost never speak Lebanese. I conduct business in English, German, French, Italian, Spanish, and Dutch. But when things get tough, I cuss in my native tongue. Then he paused, and he looked at the group and said, "We have a collective native tongue in our division. When things are going well, we speak employee involvement and participative management. But when we suffer some red ink, and when things get stressful, we resort to our native tongue, which is high control. So I ask you, when conversations get tough, when they get crucial, can you see your native tongue? Can you see your style under stress? Can you see your personal impact on the conversation? What do you do when you feel that you've had your thumb smashed? The most effective communicators have learned to look at themselves. They've learned to notice how their actions and their reactions affect the crucial conversations. In this section, we'll look at what style under stress is and what we can do to improve our skills in tough times. So a first question is, how did we develop our style under stress? We were socialized, educated. We watched people influence others. We were influenced ourselves. This is a normal process of growing up and learning how to interact. But it's not an overt, obvious process for almost anyone. Most often it's invisible. It's hard to see ourselves. It's particularly hard when we're engaged in a budget meeting that isn't working well, when our boss is giving us tough feedback, when we're having a performance discussion with a direct report who is telling us that we're picking on them because we're bad and evil. When the sun is shining and things are working and we're getting results, we often use our best skills. But when we hit a tough discussion, when we're having problems, then what is our style under stress? What do we do then? How do we act? That's the question, and that's what we'll cover. And here is an unfortunate finding. When it matters the most, people often do their worst. On the other hand, when it matters the most, the best communicators use their best skills. They see that the conversation matters, and they engage and use their best skills. When conversations get tough, they see where they are.